Moving to a new state is stressful enough, and if you are prioritizing top-rated schools, you might be a little confused as to why there are limited choices or why the same school can have such a dramatic difference in scoring depending on the source you are looking at. In this video, I'm going to go over why that may be and how you can accurately assess these scores in order to make an informed decision for you and your family on a top-rated school. Hello and welcome. I am Danielle. I'm a realtor here in the Houston suburbs, and I help you either build or find your dream home before relocating to Houston. If you are looking to move to the area and would like assistance, feel free to message me. I would love to help you out. This video is not going to call out the very specific top-rated schools here in Houston. Unfortunately, as realtors, we're not allowed to explicitly say. However, this video is going to give you information about how Texas scores its schools and why it matters. Just for a really quick breakdown, HAR, this is the Greater Houston's main MLS source. They gather most of their information from the Texas Education Agency data as well as the Texas Academic Performance Report. The scores are ranked A through F, A being a top school, F being a school that needs work, and they also have medal designations. Each school can score up to 7 medals. This source is the most data-driven source when it comes to test scores and academic progress. So if these are the things you prioritize, then I would highly suggest looking into this source to gauge a school. Redfin, Realtor, Zillow, and Trulia all use GreatSchools.org. GreatSchools is a nonprofit organization that analyzes all the schools within the country and then gives them a school rating. This one is also pretty heavy data-driven. At least 50% of the score they come up with has to do with test scores. However, the other 50% has to do with several other categories such as college prep, ethnicity, diversity, and also growth. And growth is different than proficiency because growth measures how much a child has grown since attending that school. So GreatSchools' idea is to give a parent a much more broader scope of the school overall and not just focus on test scores. I would carefully look at the breakdown of the school score to see what's driving the score up or down, since GreatSchool likes to give parents a much broader sense of the school. It's not just data and test scores on GreatSchools. For example, a school that is an A rated on HAR could have a 6 or 7 on GreatSchools and still be one of the highest performing schools test-wise in the city. Another example is if a student is scoring near the max or top on a test score, then there is not really much room for growth, therefore that is going to negatively impact the score that you see on GreatSchools. This could potentially negatively impact the score on GreatSchools because the students aren't improving much, but if they're already at the top, then you can decide if that is significant enough or not in order to see if it's a good school. Another one that is not commonly used on realtor websites, but it is a very common school scoring system, is Niche. Niche does use some data-driven information. However, it is also based on thousands and thousands of reviews of students and parents. My best suggestion is to use all 3 of these sources to your advantage and to also talk to other parents within the neighborhood you are considering, as well as the school. I don't recommend just relying on one source to make your decisions on what the best rated school would be for your family. One other thing to note is that Texas school systems did not record test scores the last 2 years during the pandemic. Since most of these sites are using national data to come up with the scores and not accounting for special circumstances throughout the state, it has kind of driven the scores down amongst many of our districts within Texas. In fact, this is the first year where Texas is going to start recording the test scores again, so we should see some previously rated high districts come back up again. New schools and low ratings or no ratings. If you were thinking of building new construction and you are in an area with a brand new school and you cannot find any ratings or information on that school, that is because generally it takes about 3 to 5 years for these systems to gather enough data in order to produce a score. My recommendation is to look at the school previously zoned to the area to see how it's doing, as well as to talk to parents in the community to see how they feel about the previous school and the new school. You may have noticed also that when you are looking in new construction areas, the schools tend to be rated maybe a 6 to an 8 instead of a 9 or a 10. And there are a few reasons for this that I want to go over really quick. In Texas, more than half the school funding comes from property taxes. When a developer buys a new piece of land in an underdeveloped or rural area, there is not a lot of property taxes within the small community. It can take a large development several years to accumulate the tax dollars to build up the community and to achieve the scores you see online compared to some established community or neighboring communities. Just remember, some of the high schools you see with 10 rated scores, most of these communities have been around 5 to 10 years or more and have had a lot of time to develop this score. This does not mean that the schools in newer communities are worse, they just don't have the same amount of time, funding accumulation, or historical data. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it can take at least a few years for these systems to gather information on new schools in order to produce a score for you to see online. And lastly, keep in mind that these scores can fluctuate. When I moved into my neighborhood a few years ago, the high school was rated a 10 out of 10. As of right now, it is a 6 out of 10, and that is mainly because of the pandemic and them not reporting test scores the last couple of years. And also, third-party websites like GreatSchools are constantly evolving and changing the categories that they score schools in. So if the category changes or they change the way they are calculating the data, that can significantly change a score from one year to the next. So again, make sure you look at the breakdown on what's driving the score up and down, and make sure you are looking at sources that prioritize what's important to you, whether it be test scores or something else. That way you can make the best informed decision for you and your family. I hope this has clarified a few things as you do your research in relocating to Houston. If you would like assistance, feel free to message me. I would love to help you out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.